Hello there, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for another of our on-demand sessions. This week, we're going to be taking a closer look at the UK and Ireland, staying a little closer to home with our top 5 holidays here. So thanks very much for tuning in. My name is Anna Davis. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for the UK, and I will be your host for our time together today. So we're going to, as I say, take a look at 5 holidays in the UK and Ireland that are available to take later this year for a last minute getaway into 2022 and beyond into 2023. Start with some news. A lot of the holidays that I'm going to mention today include Scotland. We do currently have Scotland on sale with a saving of £150 per couple available for a limited time, £75 saving if you are a solo traveller. Our offers always extend to solo travellers as well, of course. More information available on that on our website. Now, I know a number of you have tuned in to our presentations before, but for those who are new to us, I hope those that are already familiar won't mind me just taking a few minutes to talk a little bit about what makes Railbookers different and the sorts of holidays that we can help you pop together. So we've been creating these independent holidays for about 17 years now. Our team have a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge around the best routes and the best options to take during your holiday on the tracks. They are independent holidays, so you're not traveling as part of a group. You don't have a escorted tour nature on these holidays. That means really that flexibility is key. You can have a holiday with everything that you want in it and nothing that you don't. So very much the choice is yours. So all of the holidays that I'm going to talk about today are really just there as a guide, a suggested holiday in terms of the itinerary. But if you want to add in extra nights, if you want to add in extra destinations, join from your local UK station, lots of options available really to make the holiday truly yours. You can book up to 2 years in advance with us, which really does make us unique in the rail space. And we have a whole collection of trips really subject to what you're looking for, whether that's a city break, a multi-centre stay, a coast to coast across the US or Canada, a luxury trip of a lifetime, extending your cruise perhaps and exploring the Swiss mountains after you've disembarked in Basel. Lots and lots of different options available for you depending on the sort of holiday you're looking for. If you're at the trip planning stage and looking for your next trip and some ideas of where you'd like to go and what you'd like to see, do have a look for our digital brochures. You'll find these on our website at railbookers.co.uk under the How to Get Started section, and you can download all or one of our digital brochures. We have UK and Ireland specifically, as well as a Scottish brochure, a worldwide brochure, Spain, cruise extensions, luxury journeys, a whole range there available with some great ideas for your next getaway. And we do still have a maximum flexibility policy in place as well, really giving customers peace of mind now for a couple of years almost, really, and giving you the option to change or cancel your holiday without any penalty. If you'd like any more information on that, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, do give us a call. We're on 0203 780 2222, and our guest relations team are available to take any questions you may have. Now, as I mentioned, our holidays are independent. You don't travel as part of a group, but that doesn't mean that you're entirely alone when you travel should you need our assistance. So you do have the benefit of a 24-hour support from our global offices. We have teams in the UK, in Australia, as well as in Canada, and 2 locations on the east and west coast in the USA as well. So you do have an emergency number to call on your travel documentation should you need our assistance whilst you're traveling, if there's anything we can help with whilst you're away. Now, we've been working with rail partners, as I mentioned, for about 17 years now as Railbookers to put these independent holidays together, and we work with all of the operators on the screen and more. These are very much one-stop shop sort of holidays, so we are able, of course, to book the rail journey, but also the hotel accommodation, excursions, sightseeing, flights, car hire in some cases. So very much every element of the holiday that you'll need can be booked with us, and as I say, can be booked up to now November 2023. And lastly but not leastly, before we move into looking at the holidays in a bit more detail, Just wanted to still touch on what the rail operators have in place, have been doing throughout COVID really to maintain a safe environment on board. And of course, all of the railways really operated as an essential service during the height of the pandemic. And as more and more leisure customers travel on the trains, they have a great deal of experience now in terms of keeping that environment safe for travellers. So facial coverings are very much required in most stations and on trains, certainly on the continent. And you are encouraged to wear facial coverings throughout the journey, aside from when you're eating or drinking. We still see a continued and increased cleaning regime, both at the stations but also on board the trains during the journey and at the end of each service. And lastly, also seeing still an increase in contactless ticket control. So there's really very little exchange of documentation between customers and train staff to avoid that contact. So that was very much in place, starting to be in place before COVID, but COVID has certainly increased the amount that's happening through emails, on apps, scanning barcodes, etc. So without further ado, let's take a tour of the UK and Ireland on the rails. So I have 5 fantastic holidays to share with you today. And the first one of those is our Grand Tour of Scotland. This is a 10-day holiday with a starting price of £1,199 and really allows you to experience Scotland in all its glory. It's a 10-day trip, as I say, taking in some fantastic experiences in Inverness, the Isle of Skye, Fort William, Edinburgh. You visit the island Donan Castle. You'll travel on the West Highland line between Fort William and MALLAIG, a whole host of experiences. It starts from London on board the Caledonian Sleeper. So you'll travel overnight from London up to Inverness. And first thing I'll say on that is there are very few stops outside of London on the Caledonian Sleeper, so it's best to come to London and do the journey from there. That said, if you didn't want to travel overnight and just wanted to travel on a day service from your local UK station to reach Inverness, that's absolutely possible as well. As I say, nothing about these itineraries is set in stone. You have a huge amount of options to really tailor the trip to exactly what you want and how you want to do it. But you'll travel on the Highland line up to Inverness on the Caledonian Sleeper on this itinerary. And you're based in Inverness for a 2-night stay, during which time you have a day trip over to the Isle of Skye and visiting the island Donan Castle on the way as well. And we'll take a look at some of these destinations shortly. You then travel down to Glasgow and then to Fort William. And whilst you're in Fort William, you have a day trip on the West Highland line that's running between Fort William and MALLAIG. Now, if you're travelling between April and October, that journey on the West Highland line will be on the Jacobite steam railway. Again, we'll have a look at that shortly. You'll also enjoy a day trip to Loch Lomond and Stirling Castle whilst you're staying in Glasgow, and your trip rounds off with a 2-night stay in Edinburgh before you then travel back to London and back to your local station, or not as far south if you live slightly further north. So as I say, we can add on the train from your local UK station if you'd like us to take care of that as well. So we'll have a look at some of the experiences of the destinations whilst you're travelling. So here, as I say, the Caledonian Sleeper, we use the Caledonian Sleeper a lot in our trips north of the border. It's a really great experience. It was really relaunched in 2019, brand new rolling trains, and a really lovely experience to travel overnight. There are 3 classes of service on board. You have the Classic, which is here. You then also, and that's a cabin really for 1 or 2 people. You then have the Club Room, which is the same as the Classic, but it does have ensuite facilities. And then at the top, you have the Caledonian Double. Now, there are 2 double cabins per train, and this is a full-size double bed, which is a very rare thing nowadays on an overnight train. You have the ensuite facilities in the Caledonian Double as well, and all sleeping car passengers, whether you're in Classic Club or the Caledonian Double, you have access to the lounge car as well, where you have an extensive menu featuring lots of Scottish specialities, and breakfast is also included when you opt for a sleeping car option as well. So here, just an example of some of the food served on board: Scottish salmon, fully stocked bar as well. So you'll reach Inverness, and on this trip you're based in Inverness for 2 nights. It's a great base for exploring the wider Highland area. Inverness, a lovely location on the river there, as you can see, and lots to explore in Inverness itself. A beautiful old town. You've got the 19th century Inverness Cathedral. You have the Victorian Market, the Botanic Gardens, the Inverness Museum and Art Gallery, as well as Inverness Castle. So lots to keep you busy whilst you're in Inverness. And whilst you're staying in Inverness, you'll typically stay in the KINGSMILL Hotel. It's one of our featured hotels in the Grand Tour of Scotland and other holidays that feature Inverness. It's based in Inverness, but you have very much a countryside feel at the hotel. Most of the bedrooms have views over the landscape gardens or Inverness golf course. It's a lovely family-run, friendly hotel, which is incredibly comfortable for your time in Inverness. Now, whilst you're there, you will also have this day trip, as I mentioned, travelling over to the Isle of Skye, and en route you will stop at the island DONAN Castle, widely now known as the most photographed castle in all of Scotland. It's where 2 locks come together, a spectacular location, and has been built and rebuilt really since the 13th century, when the ramparts were added. But it's a beautiful location en route to Skye. From Island Donan, you'll travel over the Skye Bridge, you'll visit Portree on the island, the Trottenish Peninsula, Kilt Rock, the Kirang, all of the major sites included on that small group guided tour, which is in a minibus that will take you from the KINGSMILL Hotel and directly to Island Donan, over to the Isle of Skye and back. So it's a full day out with a local expert guide to escort you. One of the other highlights of the Grand Tour of Scotland is a journey on the West Highland Line. And as I mentioned, if you're travelling between April and October, you will travel on the Jacobite steam railway here, widely now known, of course, as the Hogwarts Express from the Harry Potter film franchise. But you will travel nonetheless along this spectacular route. It's an 84-mile round trip, widely known or thought of as one of the most beautiful railway journeys in the world, certainly in the top 3 or 5, and you will pass across some incredible vistas, not least the Glenfinnan Viaduct. It's a journey of real contrast. You pass the deepest loch, the highest mountain, the most westerly rail station, lots of extremes on this trip, and as I say, it's a round trip, 84 miles return, and you do have some time whilst you're travelling from Fort William. You'll reach MALLAIG here, and you have a couple of hours in this beautiful coastal town before then returning back to Fort William. And I learnt today that the name MALLAIG is derived from the Old Norse Melvik, meaning sand dune bay. Obviously very apt, and it's a spectacular location, particularly if the sky is as blue as that, for a couple of hours before your return trip to Fort William. Now, you'll round off the Grand Tour of Scotland with a couple of nights in Edinburgh. Lots, of course, to see and do there, and we include a skip the line entrance into Edinburgh Castle. You have the option to go and visit Holyrood House, Holyrood Palace, for example. And there are also, I think, a good time to mention, there are other options that we can add in to your holiday. So we do have a lot of sightseeing and excursion activities included as standard in our holidays. But if you'd like to do something different, if you'd like to upgrade that to a private tour for just yourself and your traveling companions, then that's certainly something we can do. For example, whilst you're in Edinburgh, why not upgrade to the Scotch whisky experience, where you can have a private session with one of the real experts there, just really centrally located just off Princes Street, and it has the world's largest collection, almost 4,000 bottles of Scotch whisky. You can taste a range of single malts, blended whiskies, and also come away with a souvenir whisky tasting glass as well. There are also lots of different experiences there with food, as in here, with larger groups, private groups, all sorts of options available, and certainly something that we would highly recommend whilst you're in Edinburgh to round off the trip. Now, the next trip I'd like to share with you today is our Scottish Highlands and the Orkneys holiday. Now, this again has some real contrast, as many of our trips do. You've got some fantastic city stays in both Inverness and Edinburgh, combined with the spectacular scenery and open spaces of the Orkney Islands, with a number of day trips included as well. So let's have a look at this itinerary using the map. So again, you'll start in London and travel north on the Caledonian Sleeper, and you'll travel up to Inverness. Now, the first part of this holiday is really based in Inverness, first of all, with a day trip over to the Isle of Skye. You'll then, after the first 2 nights in Inverness, travel north on a private transfer up to John O'Groats to travel over to the Orkney Islands, and on the way you will stop at DUNROBIN Castle. We'll have a look at that shortly. After 2 nights on the Isles, the Orkney Islands, you'll then travel back over to the mainland, and you'll have a further 1 night in Inverness. And after that third and final night in Inverness, you'll then travel south and have 2 nights in Edinburgh to round off the trip before then travelling back home. So as I say, on that private transfer up to John O'Groats to travel across to the Orkneys, it's a fairly early start, but you'll travel north through the Black Isle and past the imposing DUNROBIN Castle here. You'll then cross the Pentland Firth to the Orkney Islands and check in for your stay in Kirkwall, the modern-day capital of the Orkneys, and you're there for 2 nights. For the following day, you have a fully guided and escorted tour by a local guide with transport, of course, around the island, visiting many of its spectacular and famous attractions, one of which are the standing stones of STENNESS. This really does allow you to step back in time some 5,000 years at what is widely thought to be the earliest henge monument in all of the British Isles, and the enormous stones of STENNESS are all that remains of a great stone circle on an ancient ceremonial site. So some of them, the one in the foreground particularly, reaches up to 6 meters in height, and they do form part of the heart of the Neolithic Orkney World Heritage Site, which is a series of important domestic and ritual monuments across the Orkney Islands. Another one of the locations featured in this World Heritage Site includes SKARA BRAE, which is also included on this day trip. So long before Stonehenge or even the Egyptian pyramids were built, SKARA BRAE was a really thriving village. It was first actually uncovered by a storm in 1850. That's when they discovered the site in modern times, and it's still very much a place of discovery today. So you can visit a replica house to see how it may have looked in the past. And you can follow lots of paths around the site and really get a sense of what life was like for a farmer, a hunter, a fisherman who lived there all those thousands of years ago. But that day trip really around the Orkneys with that expert visiting some of these incredible sites, a real highlight of your time on the Orkney Islands. Now, to combine perhaps an Edinburgh stay with some other cities, why not consider our London, Edinburgh, York and the Caledonian Sleeper holiday? So this is a 7-day trip with a starting price of £1,049. Begins and ends in London. However, if you don't want to stay overnight in London, there is no requirement to do so. We can take you straight back to your local station if you prefer. But you will travel overnight on the Caledonian Sleeper from London, this time to Edinburgh, and you'll have a 2-night stay in Edinburgh. Again, plenty of time to explore the castle, some of the sites slightly more off the beaten track as well. You'll then travel south back down to York for a 2-night stay there before then travelling back down to London. So a really great way to combine some of the UK's most loved cities in one. Here, just a suggestion is the Dean's Village, in Edinburgh. Just a short walk from the main attractions really off Princes Street, but a really great place to spend a few hours. It really was the industrial heart of Edinburgh. Lots of old mill buildings, for example, many of which are UNESCO World Heritage protected because of their importance, but a really lovely place to spend a few hours, I say, slightly away from the hustle and bustle of Edinburgh, but very, very easily reached from its main streets. You'll also have time to visit Holyrood Palace, for example, as I say, as well as Grassmarket. Lots to explore, the hop on hop off pass in Edinburgh as well. So lots to see and do in Edinburgh. If you wanted to make the trip a little extra special, why not consider upgrading the hotel to this, the Waldorf Astoria Royal Mile. Housed in a former railway station. It's been a home of this hotel since 1903. Really combines some fantastic luxury touches in a magnificent Victorian building, and it couldn't be more central. You've got the views of the castle there, as you see through the hotel window. Step outside the front door and you're right in the heart of Edinburgh with everything going on. So a really great suggestion, as I say, if you're looking to make the trip to Edinburgh a little bit extra special. You'll then travel south to York, the second home of the second largest Gothic cathedral of Northern Europe, York Minster. And of course, it's had its fair share of rebuilds itself, York Minster, over the years, but you've also got plenty of time to explore, of course, the magnificent medieval city walls, or bar walls as they're called locally. These encircle the historic city of York, about 2 miles of surviving stonework still in place, and they are the longest town walls in England. Also, of course, don't miss the Railway Museum when you're in York. Certainly an absolute must and really easily reached from the railway station itself, as well as exploring the history of chocolate making in York with the Rowntree's factory, originally opened in 1890 and then taken over by Nestle in 1988. Just some of the things you can do whilst you're there for 2 nights. And you'll typically stay here, the Hilton York, which is located opposite the iconic Clifford's Tower, as you can just see out of the window there. Again, walking distance to all of the popular attractions, including the Jorvik Centre and the York Minster. Really great location to stay. Now, slightly further afield, and still relatively close to home, I'm going to take you to Ireland now and have a look at our Dublin, Cork, Killarney and Galway holiday. This is a 9-day trip with a starting price of £1,249 and really bases a round trip from Dublin. Now, of course, you can reach Dublin a couple of ways, either by local train to the Welsh coast and then travelling over on the ferry, or by air. Choice is yours, and we can certainly add that on for you, subject to what your preference is. But it's a 9-day holiday, starting a price, as I say, from £1,249. So let's have a little look at the route you'll take. So you'll start in Dublin with a 2-night stay, and whilst you're there, we include the Dublin Pass with the hop-on, hop-off tour and many other things that I'll mention in a moment. You'll then travel south to Cork. You have a 2-night stay there before moving on to Killarney and a 2-night stay there with a day trip around the Ring of Kerry. Then it's up through Limerick to Galway. You have a 2-night stay in Galway with a day trip to the spectacular Cliffs of Moher, and then it's back to Dublin for your final night before the end of your holiday. So Dublin, of course, needs little introduction, but there's so much to do, and the hop-on, hop-off city pass that we include gives you access to pretty much all of the popular sites and attractions you'd like to visit, including Dublin Zoo, St Patrick's Cathedral, the National Museum of Ireland, the Jameson's Distillery included in that as well, and of course free entry into the Guinness Storehouse. It's a 7-floor experience about all things Guinness, but certainly worth doing because the view from the top floor alone, never mind the free sample at the top, but the view from the top alone is really, really definitely worth it from personal experience. So do make sure you do that whilst you're there. You'll then move on to Cork, a really lovely city with a beautiful location, and you have a tour perhaps of the Cork City Jail, the historic prison there, or admire the Victorian and Gothic architecture of the city's cathedral. It's got a really lovely feel to Cork, and it also has some fantastic restaurants on its sort of main high street as well. You will certainly not go hungry in Cork, that's for sure. Certainly something else to consider whilst you're in Killarney. You could visit Ross Castle, which is just a couple of kilometres outside and really easy to reach. Perhaps get a taxi to take you there, but it's built on the edge of Killarney's lower lake and built originally in the 15th century, and it came into the hands of the Brown family, who became the Earls of Kenmare, and they owned an extensive part of the lands that now are the Killarney National Park. And lots of legend and myth around the castle, but it's a lovely place to go just for a couple of hours whilst you're staying in Killarney if you have some spare time. Then you will move on to Galway, and you have a 2-night stay in Galway, where you will then take day trip out to Killarney Lakes and National Park. So you have a tour of the Ring of Kerry, some beautiful sites exploring the shores of Dingle Bay, the coastal views of Kenmare Bay, and also the magic of the Macgillycuddy Reeks, which are some beautiful scenes and wide open spaces. Really is a spectacular part of the world to explore. And you'll also visit the Cliffs of Moher before the end of your holiday approaches. So towards the end of your trip, you'll have a day trip out to these UNESCO listed cliffs. They stretch over 8 kilometres and at their highest point, 214 metres above sea level. But on a clear day, you can see over to the Aran Islands. Beautiful setting and a lovely spot to spend a few hours watching the sun go down. Now, lastly but not leastly, wanted to share with you our Belmont Royal Scotsman Highland journey. Now, this is a perfect way perhaps to celebrate a missed special occasion since the pandemic. If you're looking to celebrate a special anniversary, a special birthday, or just treat yourselves after the last couple of years, then a trip on the Royal Scotsman may be something certainly worth considering. We have a number of different holidays featuring the Royal Scotsman. I wanted to share with you our Highland journey one. This is a 5-day holiday with a starting price of £4,699, and it's based on the journey beginning and ending in Edinburgh, very much a round trip on board this most magnificent train, part of the same family as the Venice Simplon Orient Express. So it's really the perfect way if you're wanting to explore a little closer to home, explore everything that the Highlands has to offer, but do so in true luxury and style with faultless service, amazing dining experiences, then the Royal Scotsman may just be the thing. And on this trip, you'll explore the 13th century castle at the Rothiemurchus estate. You'll visit the Culloden battlefields. You have a whisky tasting session at the famous Strathisla distillery, all whilst watching the beautiful scenery roll past your window from your private cabin on board the Royal Scotsman. Sorry. So you'll depart from Edinburgh Waverley, and all departures of the Royal Scotsman are done so with a piper on the platform, give you a bit of an authentic Scottish experience. First class service as you'd expect, so you'll be escorted to your private cabin, welcomed personally on board by the team who will look after your every need during the journey. Onboard dining is absolutely first class, and here you have an image of the dining carriage with, as you can see, that very much the silver service experience as you travel. The dining, as you would expect, features local produce, so lots of Scottish games, Scottish seafood. They can, of course, cater for any dietary requirements as well, but it's a fully stocked bar with first-class wines and, of course, plenty of single malts stocked as well. Some example of the food here. So as I say, really showcasing the best of Scottish land and sea produce, from rich game, seasonal seafood, wild salmon, always feature regularly on their menu. You may also have kedgeree for breakfast, or sample some of the steamed Scottish mussels after one of your days of activities as well. Scottish pigeon. There's lots and lots of choice and really delicious food to be had. Now on board, as I say, all rooms are private cabins and all cabins are en suite on the Royal Scotsman, very much feeling like a luxury country hotel on the track. So a really cosy experience really on the Royal Scotsman, quite and incredibly comfortable. So you have the double cabin here, and you have a single cabin if you're traveling as a solo customer as well. You have a twin cabin if you prefer. And here, very much the social heart of the train is the lounge car. So a little bit like the blue car on board the Orient Express. The lounge car on the Royal Scotsman is where many people congregate for afternoon tea, perhaps for pre-dinner drinks, for a nightcap after dinner. And it's also where there are a number of things laid on for customers as you travel. So you may be invited into the lounge car to listen to a local historian or a local wildlife expert, for example. There's often live music from some local Scottish singers and folk bands as well. So lots of things happening whilst you travel to make your experience really very, very special on board. So that's the end of our tour of the UK and Ireland today on the rails. Hope you've enjoyed that whistle-stop tour of some of the options that we have available. If you'd like more information, do check out our website, www.railbookers.co.uk. As I say, on there you can download our digital brochures if you'd like some more information on any of the holidays I've mentioned today. Look out for the UK and Ireland brochure there, but we have a wide range to choose from. You'll also find within our destinations section a section on the United Kingdom, as well as many, many other destinations, and you can find all of the holidays that I've mentioned today there with a day-by-day itinerary, the route map, and pricing through to 2023. However, if you've got any questions or if you'd like to speak to one of our team of rail experts for anything specifically looking at a trip that you're planning, if you'd like some advice, please do give us a call. We're on 0203 780 2222, and we are very much open. We are open Monday to Friday, 9 till 5:30, and we'd love to hear from you. So really all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for joining me for our on-demand session today. Hope you've enjoyed the tour of options a little closer to home to consider, and I will speak to you again very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.